All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining me today for this talk. So my talk is really going to be on street epistemology, and we'll talk a little bit about street epistemology. Comes originally from Dr. Peter Boghossian, who wrote the book A Manual for Creating Atheists. So let's start off with, what is street epistemology? So I'm focusing today on the part of street epistemology that is a conversational tool that helps people reflect on the reliability of their methods used to derive the confidence level in their beliefs. And I'm going to teach you a little bit about how to do it, and then point you to lots of resources to help you do it. So the first question I have is, why do it? Why would someone want to engage in street epistemology? So I have been asked literally for years about people, how do you talk to the people in your life who are religious? And but most of the time my answer is always sort of like, why would you want to even try to talk them out of their beliefs? But is it a goal to convert people to atheism or rationality? Is that even a goal? And is it a kind of anti-evangelism? I personally don't really love it when people try to convert me to their faith. Fortunately, I don't really have anyone in my life who's doing that to me. Is this sort of the opposite of that? And if so, does that make it wrong? Or rather, is this a parallel to that? However, street epistemology is very different than street evangelism, and here's how. A street epistemologist would never tell someone what they should think. And a street epistemologist would say, if someone can show me how to have a justified true belief about God, then I would gladly accept it. So it is true that if you are telling someone what to think, you are not doing street epistemology, because street epistemology is more like Socratic dialogue. You are helping someone think through for themselves what it is that they do believe, not telling them what to believe. So it's very different from evangelism in that way. Now, Peter Boghossian, in his book, goes so far as to say he is not an atheist. Although, note the title of the book is called A Manual for Creating Atheists. So I just want to be very clear on where I stand in all of this. I am unapologetically atheist, and I would love to create more atheists. Last spring, or this spring, which is now past, we had people assembling in large churches to pray away COVID. And I think that was a bad thing. And also at this point in history, we've had about 700,000 people explicitly subjected to conversion therapy, which I think, religion is at the root of that. And I'd be thrilled to see that go away. I think that's a bad thing. So I would love for people to question where it is that they're getting these beliefs that cause them to do these terrible things. And that's what's in it for me. Now, maybe for you, you would just like a more positive way to engage your friends and loved ones about their God beliefs. And I really do believe that this can help you. Also, there's another talk, by the way, on the book, A Manual for Creating Atheists, which was we did here at Seattle Atheist Church a couple years ago, about 4 years ago, and I will pop a link to that in the Facebook. So, how many of the people in the audience are already aware of street epistemology? All right. Do we have any street epistemologists out there? Practicing street epistemologists? Ooh, not yet. Okay. So if you're, whether or not you're ready, you actually think you want to do street epistemology, it's a great thing to be aware of. And there's lots of resources at streetepistemology.com. There's a street epistemology guide. I put the link to that in our Facebook group. I can't recommend enough the videos by Anthony Magnabosco, where he actually films himself doing street epistemology. And there is an app for practicing street epistemology that you can practice by yourself before you try it out on someone else. It's called Atheists app. I'm going to show that to you in just a minute. And there are links to all of this in the private Facebook group. If you want to actually, at the end of this, join a street epistemology group, if you get the street epistemology guide, at the end of it, there are links to their Facebook groups where you can network with other street epistemologists. Okay, so Steve is putting up this thing called Atheists app. And the Atheists app, I just want you to have a chance to see it. I don't know, can they see it now? The idea with the Atheists app is it's just an opportunity for you to sort of practice with yourself to get more confident before you would go out and do street epistemology. Okay. So the original idea for street epistemology, as I already mentioned, comes from a manual for creating atheists, which was written by Dr. Peter Boghossian, who's a professor at Portland State University. Epistemology is the branch of philosophy that deals with how we know and how we distinguish between justified belief and mere opinion. So epistemology deals with how you acquire a belief and how you maintain that belief. So how can you and I arrive at justified true beliefs? So we often talk about the importance of doing critical thinking here at church, and this is the virtuous cycle of carefully defining your questions, learning what there is to know about a subject, making claims on what you think is the basis of good evidence, and then going out and seeking an expert thinking that challenges what you think you know, which will then lead to you creating better questions, seeking out more information, arriving at answers, challenging those answers. And that works when you're thinking about anything. Anything you have to think about, including your God belief or conspiracy theory or and that's how you should come to what we're going to call justified true beliefs. But it takes a lot of work. And usually people don't have time for that. So for most things, we consider the credibility of our source, and then we admit to ourselves that we can't be 100% certain about our belief. When you're doing street epistemology, though, you are not using this claim, counterclaim process. You are not engaging in trying to determine whether the claim is true through facts. If you're having that kind of discussion, let's say about a person's God belief, then you are not doing street epistemology. You are doing what's known as counter-apologetics. And it's important to make that distinction because street epistemology isn't just going out in public and then trying to disabuse people of their God belief. And in fact, it can be used, this method can be used for any belief. So what is street epistemology? It is the art of helping people think and speak clearly about how they came to their beliefs and specifically to examine the methodology they're using to get there. And it can be used for anything, including the God belief. A street epistemologist that I've watched is Anthony Magnabosco. And I'm going to kind of run you through his process, or at least what I saw was his process, as giving you an idea of how somebody who does this does it, okay? So he's standing out there, he's got a clipboard, and he's just says, first he starts off by just saying hello to people who are walking by, and he does that until he starts to feel kind of warmed up enough to now start asking people if they have a few minutes to talk about either how they form their beliefs or sometimes about if they have a God belief, how they form their God belief. And I would prefer, he prefers doing this one-on-one. And again, it's like, is there a belief that you have that you feel strongly about? What is that belief? And it isn't always about God. People come up with other things that they say they believe in. So the first step is to develop some rapport with the person you're talking to. So you introduce yourself, exchange some pleasantries, and you want to take a genuine interest in the person. There's a lot of emphasis on being nice because people simply cannot open up and think clearly when they feel like they're under attack. So you're going to ask them if they like to look at how they know something that they believe they know. And at this point, you will have said at least twice in this just couple of minute exchange that we're looking at how we come to know things. And it's very important that you're going to stick on that point. If they start asking you what your beliefs are, you can offer to tell them after this discussion about how they have come to know things. All right, but you want to use non-confrontational language, which includes we language or one languages. Like, how do we know? How does one know? And there's a lot of emphasis that you too should be sincerely ready to revise your beliefs in light of new information, and that you're modeling that. You want to model openness. But since you're not actually going to really be talking about what you believe until later in the conversation, modeling that means saying things like, it's important to me to think about where my ideas come from. Would you say that's true for you too? And by the way, you don't have to do this on a street. And in fact, if you are doing it outside, it's more relaxing to choose a spot that is away from traffic. So the ones I saw, University Quad, sometimes on a street, but a not very busy street, or in a park are good places to be doing it. So he will show the person a timer and say, this will only take 5 or 10 minutes, or, do you have 5 minutes? Is that okay with you? And really 10 minutes is going to be enough. Like, I've watched lots of these. It's shocking how far he can get in 10 minutes by staying really focused on this question. And also, as the conversation goes, he continues to ask, like, would you like to continue discussing this? So the person kind of, they're always at choice about the fact that they want to be there. So if you're familiar with Socratic dialogue, your goal is to get the person to reveal the knowledge to themselves, because it is that way that it is more likely to penetrate and make a difference. You probably will not ever get the satisfaction of someone just capitulating, but you'll probe to see if they have any cognitive dissonance once their thinking becomes clearer to them. For regular members of Seattle Atheist Church, we frequently talk about something called crucial conversations. And one of the principles of crucial conversations is that you should expect every time you have a really important conversation not to come to closure, but that you're moving the person along, because people get into defensiveness, whatever, but they might go away and think about what you've been talking about. And this is exactly the idea that we're looking for with street epistemology. All right. In Anthony Magnabosso's videos, he talks to people. He actually has one on sort of like, one of the times when you would not do this street epistemology. So you could just see him modeling, a lot of kindness. For example, if someone tells you that someone that they love is ill and it's their God belief that is getting them through it, he would just stop and thank them for their time and be off. This is, there's no reason to push at that particular point. But after you ask them what is the claim that they want to make, ask on a scale of 0 to 100 how certain they are about the belief. And when it comes to God beliefs, most people usually say they're 100% certain. Ask them where they got this belief. And it's very important at this point to listen, because people's answers vary. And you want to repeat back their own words to them to make sure that you really understand what they are saying, and also for them to have a chance to sort of hear what it is they just said. And there should be zero whiff of a game of gotcha here, because that's just not like what this is about. And as the person talks, he or she will probably revise their statements. So you too will just keep revising, what it is that you're hearing them say. You want to try to define the words being used. Replace ambiguous words with definitions. so that both you and the person with whom you're speaking know what you were talking about. And you're trying to make sure that you mean the same thing. And this goes without saying, but don't paraphrase what they're saying in some sort of an obnoxious way. Like if they say they have faith, you don't say, well, my definition of faith is believing things without good evidence. Like, no, you just want to ask them, what does faith mean to you? What does it look like to have faith? Okay, and Les Wrong calls this move the rationalist taboo. By prohibiting certain words and the word synonyms to it, or in this case, redefining, defining it, not redefining it, but just defining it, like what words do they really mean when they say faith, love, God, hope, angels, whatever it is. People are forced to elucidate the specific contextual meaning that they want to express, thus removing ambiguity, otherwise present in a single word. For example, someone says they have a guardian angel, and you might ask them, well, what can we say about the guardian angel? What is a guardian angel like? How do we know if we have a guardian angel? And then for the remainder of the conversation, you're going to use the definition that they provided, as opposed to talking about their guardian angel. You want to say, well, how would we know that we have a non-corporeal entity that watches over us and intervenes on our behalf? Some good questions to ask are, can you remember the first time you had that belief? And what would it take for you to change your mind about? Here, the person actually has to try to falsify their belief. How would we know if it's not true? If you know by faith, is faith the best method to know things? What else in your life do you know by faith? Or the person is talking about like making a decision. To this question, a person might answer that it's faith and reason together that help them make the decision. So you see their definition will slightly change. They'll add bits to it. And you just want to move fluidly with that. So let's say they used faith and reason to select this particular job or school. You'll ask the person to create a pie chart showing what percentage of the decision was made by faith and what part was based on evidence. So the other thing here is like, what if they had to choose a particular religion? And often they will make certain claims about their religion. And if they start saying things like, all religions are true, you might point out that like different religions believe different things that are sometimes in contradiction. But at that point, you're not to supply the conclusion, therefore they can't be true. It's just like, so I wonder, how can we be sure that the one that you're claiming to believe in, how do you know that's true? This kind of reasoning can help a person realize that faith or hope usually fills in the gap for the unknown. And they may start to have aporia. But if you tell them, if you instruct them on, for example, the God of the gaps, that is, that we use God to fill in the parts that, where we don't have another answer, you will lose them. At some point, you will see a certain look on someone's face where you can see that they're thinking. Maybe their eyes look up at the sky like this. Or they seem really puzzled. And when that happens, do not interrupt. That's very important. You're like looking out for that to happen. And you're not going to fill in the blanks for them. It means that someone is really thinking about your question, and it's called aporia. Aporia is defined as an irresolvable internal contradiction of logical distinction in a text, argument, or theory. Okay, so they start making distinctions, noticing some internal contradictions, and that's actually a really great time to end the interview, to leave them alone with their thoughts. As the people you talk to, that you do street epistemology with, wrap up the conversation, you want to ask, what is their certainty about their claim now? And it may have gone down a little bit. So they were 100% certain before, and now they're 90% certain. That's success, okay? And you can offer to meet up with them again, or point them to websites, YouTube's, books, and also invite them to visit communities that are based on reason to continue, if they have questions, they might continue thinking about it. And here's some resources. And obviously, one place where we'd love to see, if you're talking to anybody and you feel like they're having a little aporia, they are so welcome at Seattle Atheist Church. And so, please invite them. In Facebook, I dropped a link to research by Gordon Pennycook called On the Reception Detection of Pseudo-Profound Bullshit. This is research about the fact that most people assume that whatever a speaker is saying is true. To even understand a statement, you have to consider that it's true. So you first assume it makes sense before you start wondering about the meaning. In the study, research used a website called Wisdom of Chopra, where they fed in a bunch of woo-woo sounding tweets by Deepak Chopra and then scrambled the words to come up with fresh, pretty much nonsensical sentences. Now, I primed you now that we're going to show you this website. And so I just said they come up with nonsensical, and that was a boo-boo. I shouldn't have done that. Because I actually, the other night, sat there and played with this, and I just kept coming up with meaningful sentences because our minds are meaning-making machines. And the first thing that we do is we try to make meaning, before we back up and say, does that even make sense? And especially if we trust the source. So the research subjects in this research immediately started seeing profundity in these random quotes. I'm going to pull up the Wisdom of Chopra. All right. So as you can see, as you refresh this, it just pulls together some stream of consciousness thing. Here it says, true identity unfolds into infinite silence. There's an example of something I could write there. I could sit down and write a whole essay on what that means. Let's randomly generate another one. The universe depends on total acceptance of fulfillment. Okay, so, and our minds do that, okay? It requires critical thinking to then, and I'm going to model how, you can think about these things to allow yourself, to prevent yourself from sort of being taken down the path of believing in some strange things. Okay, so we would say, so do I go off accepting uncritically the deepity of some bit of woo that has wafted over me? Or do I start thinking critically? And I would argue that there's also good social reasons why it's a bonding thing with somebody, that you're accepting them as you're accepting them as a source, and then you're going down the path with them, as opposed to starting immediately thinking, critically about the source. And then asking yourself, do I understand what that means? Can I paraphrase it? So that's a good way to try to, anything that you read really that you want to make sure you understand it, is the first step is try to paraphrase it. And then look for the specific words in the sentence that have caused you to come up with that meaning, and to try to think about, how am I defining those words so that, I'm getting this meaning? And is the way that I'm using that word an atypical use of that word? And that lesson can be applied to all kinds of political movements and other things in the world. But most of us don't think that way, and it's really hard to train ourselves to think that way. And also, for me personally, I admit it's sometimes less fun to think that way than to go diving off into the deepity. So we want to be able to develop our critical thinking habits. We want to be able to learn these street epistemology techniques. They certainly do not come naturally. They require a lot of practice. And I am hoping that these are skills that the members of our community will continue to gain proficiency in. I, for one, might do a little playing with the Atheos app as a way to practice sort of seeing things that people might say and how you might respond and all that kind of thing. But anyway, it'd be great to get more familiar with this community, because I think that we have work in common, right? Which is trying to help people have justified true beliefs instead of believing just any nonsense that comes our way. Thank you.